Everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today we're going to talk about Bitcoin and the fact that the Bitcoin bull market support band has now crossed $36,000. The 20-week SMA is now at 36,380. The 21-week EMA is now at 380 or 38,851. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up. Also check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. We're only about 1,000 subscribers away from 250,000, so make sure you guys subscribe and turn on your alerts. Let's go ahead and jump in. So this bull market support band is something we followed for quite a while now. And in fact, this was one of the last things that needed to happen during this breakout back in March and April. And as we got over here into August, we said this is the last thing that we need before we can say that, okay, we are in a bull market. Now, one of the things that people often discuss, right, are golden crosses and getting above the 20-week. But what I've also said is you really need to test the 20-week moving average and over a several week time frame, right? You don't just want a one-day test where it goes up. Really, you want a systematic test of the 20-week moving average, the 20-week SMA, or if you prefer, the 21-week EMA, the exponential moving average, which weights more recent prices more than older prices. So the reason that having a successful test of it is important is because if you only ever said that we need to be in a bull market, we just needed to pass the 20-week moving average, well then it sort of begs the question, what happened here, where we just went above it for a few weeks, and I don't think anyone would consider moving above it in January of 2020 to then dumping down in March to be a bull market. This was certainly not a bull market. So what we said was that we need a systematic test of this band, and if we test it and hold it, it'll be scary, right? It'll be scary. But as long as we hold the line, we know that sentiment for Bitcoin can change on a dime. Now, I did not expect it to go up 6x in 6 months from that point, but that's exactly what we did. So it further proves that we know that sentiment can change on a dime when Bitcoin is above the 20-week moving average. It comes back down, holds it as support. A lot of people are going to be scared. They're yelling, the Gap boys are yelling for $9,600 Bitcoin so that we fill the CME Gap on the daily time frame. And we said, you know what? There's a chance that we fill it at 9,600, but is it worth waiting for that? And the answer was no, right? We said the answer is no. And the reason is because, yeah, we could fill it, but is it worth, not accumulating Bitcoin when it dropped below 10K? Was it worth not accumulating it here on the chance that you got to wick down to that level? And it just wasn't worth the risk, right? We said Bitcoin is too risky not to hold. And what I think is fascinating is that it was that CME gap, in my opinion, that kind of kept a lot of people from buying at this level. This last test that we've had of the $10,000 mark, this basically made it so a lot of people didn't want to buy because they thought it was going to drop down to this level, okay? They thought it was going to drop down to the $9,600 level, which when you zoom out on the macro timescale here, right, it just looks like nothing. Like, it's like, does it matter if you had purchased it at $10,000 or if you waited 9,600? Doesn't make a huge difference, and that is why I think that was, the people that were waiting for that, they got left behind sort of, and then they end up helping continue to fuel the rally when they come in later on and they realize that, hey, maybe this isn't going to be filled. So if we're looking at the bull market support band, the longer we go without testing it, I think the more likely we are not to hold it. At this point, it has been a substantial amount of time. From here, we started basically October 5th. We left it. We're now looking at 168 days out, 24 weeks, and right now we are well above it. For us to fall back to the support band, we would need to see a dump to get to the 20-week upwards of 35% from the current prices, which would actually represent from the local top, it might represent a 40% drop. So we know based on the prior cycle that 40% drops to the 20-week are actually quite standard, right? They're nothing to really think that, okay, it can't happen. We know that it can happen. In fact, this one right here, I believe, was a 40% drop. You can see that was a 40% drop. And we had other 40% drops as well. I believe this was also a 40% drop. So we know they can happen. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the end of the bull market. The main concern, I think, would be that whenever we do test it, the time between tests is such a long period of time. Over here, back in the last cycle, we had systematic tests of the bull market support band, every 2 or 3 months. And this happened, I mean, this went on for 6 or 7 tests. Basically, we just left it, and then we would retest it 2 or 3 months later. So we had several of these periods, as I'm showing you guys right here. So between 2 to 3 months, all the way up. And then the final one was a little bit longer than all the rest, right? Okay, so this one was 112 days. This one right here was about 63 days. And then the final one was this one, the last one we had here that started on September of 2017. And we did not test it for 126 days. We tested it in January 2018, and we ultimately fell below it. Now, the reason we look at this is because, okay, we can say, oh, this was 91 days, this was about 3 months, this was about 2 months, about 3 months, maybe 2.5 months or so. This was closer to 3.5 months. This was about 2 months. And then the last one was about 4 months. So far, this cycle on say the last test of the bull market support band, it was back in October. We're already looking at 161 days, or sorry, 168 days, which is still over a month longer than our longest time frame, the cycle before. And so we have to go back further in time to get another example of something similar. Okay, so here we left the bull market support band back in November of 2012, and we had a wick to it back in April of 2013, which was about 154 days later. Okay, so a little bit shorter than where we currently are. If you don't include this wick and you actually say, okay, well, what about a systematic test of the 20-week where we really tested it, and it wasn't just a wick down to it that we recovered in, say, the next day or something. Well, in that case, it took about 231 days. And so this is this is clear evidence that this was a double peak cycle, right? We know that 2013 was a double peak cycle, and that it did not hold the 20-week moving average during that time. We actually had a few weekly closes. We had this weekly close below the 20-week, and we know the red line here is the 20-week moving average. And so we had some other we had some other candles in here that were closing below the 20-week moving average. So it was a fairly systematic several week period, at least about a month or so, maybe even up to 6 weeks, where we were closing below the 20-week moving average. So we need to consider the possibility that whenever we do test the 20-week, right, there's always a possibility we go below it. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the market cycle is over. It could just mean that we're having sort of, say, a short bear market between maybe another run. Somewhat akin to this one, right? I mean, we look back at this cycle, and maybe not everyone, but most people would look at this and say that this is a single cycle, a double peak cycle, right? Most people are calling this a double peak cycle. Yes, we had a fairly nice pullback here, but we ultimately continued on in the same calendar year and put in highs that dwarfed the prior wick top. And by that, I mean we went up another 378% later that year, about 9 months later, about 8 or 9 months later or so, or maybe about 7 to 8 months later. So we know that something like that has happened before. We know that it can happen again. So if we do not hold the bull market support band, which again is the 20-week SMA and the 21-week EMA, does it mean that the market cycle is over? I don't think it necessarily means that the market cycle is over, because we can see clear evidence of a time where it didn't happen. It didn't happen like that. So what I would say is, again, today the bull market support band ranges from 36.4K up to 38.8. That's a fairly large range. It's only going to take it another couple weeks before the bull market support band for Bitcoin is at $40,000. If we end up testing that level, does it mean the bull market's over? It means we need to hold the line. And if we don't hold the line, it doesn't mean the market cycle is over. We just might go into a fairly short bear market. And you might wonder, well, what's the difference between, say, like that type of a bear market and a market cycle peak bear market? Well, for a market cycle peak bear market, we would essentially be looking at several years before getting back to the prior all-time high. This was 3 years, where we had about a year bear market, followed by a year accumulation, maybe a year and a half accumulation, followed by a bull market to get us back above it. Okay, so this would be what I would consider to be a market cycle top, where you have a long bear market. If we don't hold the line whenever we test it, if we don't hold it, and we come below it, and then we kind of pick ourselves up by our bootstraps and then move back above it and go in for another run at a new title, then I would consider this to be all part of the same market cycle, and that a dump below the 20-week moving average would be nothing more than an opportunity for people to accumulate. Okay, a lot of people now will say they wish they could buy Bitcoin at lower prices. if they get that opportunity, these are also the people that are likely not going to take that opportunity. So stay diligent, right? Come up with a plan, figure it out, and then just stay focused. And I think that's ultimately how you'll navigate the crypto markets and Bitcoin in general. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, check out the Telegram channel in the description below. Remember, we have the premium list altcoin season sale. Check that out, sign up before the prices go up. We're gonna leave it open for a few more days since people were having trouble a few days ago getting signed up via the website because of the surge in traffic. So sign up to the premium list, altcoin season sale. You'll get access to these trading view indicators, the weekly reports and videos, the Telegram alerts channel, the Telegram chat room, the risk dashboard, the Into the Cryptoverse app, premium only live streams, and more. Make sure you guys check it out. Thank you guys for tuning in. Subscribe to the channel. Let's go for a 250,000, and I will see you next time. Bye.